Pastor Choco pastored a church in Chicago, and in the Humboldt neighborhood, he noticed that prostitution was becoming a problem. In order to deal with the problem, he did something unusual. He asked one of his staff to go out and to hire 5 prostitutes for an hour. And when the prostitutes showed up at church, to say the least, they were guarded, they were apprehensive, they were not in a good spot. And Pastor Choco then immediately greeted them, and he and his wife invited them into the church, where they found a beautiful place setting with an incredible meal and an incredible environment where they spent the next hour just telling them how much they were cared for, how much they were loved, and how much they wanted to help them get out of the situation they were in. You see, one of the things about kindness is kindness changes the environment. I want to ask you, when was the last time you encountered somebody who was really kind? Not just someone who was nice, but they were so kind that they changed the environment. In this series, Live Radiant, what we're going to do is we are walking through not just about how to change our behavior, but how do we bring Jesus into our environments? He's coming with us. I want you to think, how did Jesus impact the environments he walked into? When Jesus walked into a situation with a woman caught in the act of adultery, everyone was angry and fierce, and yet he distilled the violence and calmed everyone and spoke life and hope to this woman. There was a man that was paralyzed, and his friends lower him down into the midst of a crowded room, and it was chaos. But Jesus changed the environment and spoke kindly to him and forgave his sins. I even think of the woman at the well who had gone through so many relationships, and the town kind of ostracized her, but because of Jesus's kindness, the whole environment of that community was changed. I love the quote that you read at the beginning of this time by Barry Corey. It says, "Kindness is fierce and generous and brave." We're not talking about being nice, right? Kindness is so much different than niceness. Niceness can be shallow. Niceness can be manipulative. Niceness is, well, it's you want to be liked. You don't necessarily change the environment. And sometimes being nice, you're not even being helpful. Ultimately, being nice is about you. When we lived in Minnesota, we would tease all the time because there's this thing called Minnesota nice. But what that really meant wasn't that people were kind. It meant that if you were walking down the street and you tripped and fell, people would turn the other way and not look at you so you wouldn't feel embarrassed. Right? They thought they were being nice, but that isn't the same as being kind. Kind is, it's giving value to someone else. Kindness is helping people find hope when they're in difficult situations. Kindness is giving people security when they're being vulnerable. And one of the things about kindness, we tie it to generosity in our journey of following Jesus, because you and I need to have an abundance mindset if we're going to be generous. We need to know that you have more than enough time, talent, and treasure to invest in other people. Because if you don't think that way, you're not going to be kind. See, too many of us have a poverty mindset. What a poverty mindset is when I think that I have limited amounts of time, talent, and treasure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be protective, and I'm going to want to be in control, and I'm going to want to guard my position that I am, because I'm afraid you might take advantage of me. But an abundance mindset says, God is my source. And because God is my source, I can give and give and give and give. So I want you to think, when was the last time you really met someone who showed kindness, who led with kindness, who when they interacted with you, they changed the whole environment, right? That they helped you feel safe, that they gave you hope and purpose, that there was an opportunity for you to move forward because they just created an environment where you could be vulnerable and be your real self. They were just being like Jesus. I think this is what I love about Jesus. When Jesus confronted people, even when they were wrong, right? He didn't come down on them. He wasn't harsh on them. He wasn't trying to be even nice to them. No, Jesus was always fierce, unflinching in any situation. He was always generous. He always gave more than someone deserved or what they even thought they could get. And he was always brave. He was so willing to just give the best, even when other people might think that it was the wrong thing to do. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing some work in the library downtown, and there was a woman that came in. I could tell that she was having a rough day, and I was working. She sat down a little ways away from me, but as she was sitting there, another young man, he came around, and he was holding a cooler, and he had beverages, and he noticed her, and he just asked her if she needed something to drink. I could tell this wasn't the first time that he did this, but what I watched and began to listen to just showed the power of God's kindness. He began to ask her her story, and she said that she was having a hard time paying bills, and this was in the heat of July, and that her air conditioning was about to get turned off, and she wasn't sure how she was going to manage. That's why she was hanging out in the library during the day. He listened to her story. He looked at her, asked her a few just encouraging questions, asked her if he could pray with her, and also pointed her in the direction of a place where maybe she could find the next step of help. And in that moment, I watched him change the environment and the hope that she had in that difficult situation. Here's the challenge for this week. Will you begin to help follow Jesus and learn to lead with kindness? That your first step is always to give out what the Holy Spirit places within you. I want you to think about this. How are you leading with kindness at work? How are you leading with kindness at your home? How are you leading with kindness at church? How are you leading with kindness when you're eating out or going grocery shopping? You see, when you bring Jesus into your environment, when you lead with him, that kindness will change the way that people around you feel and think and approach. It will change everything. Let's lean in and see how God can use us to change the world that we live in when we follow him and we lead with kindness.